Hello and welcome back to The Winning Mentality, the podcast getting the stories behind sporting success. I'm Charlie Boscoe, and today I'm chatting to a man who's experienced the highest highs and the toughest lows that professional sport has to offer. He played for Manchester United and Barcelona, was forced to retire due to injury, and then came back a couple of years later just to prove he could. He's been a sporting director in Malta and Israel and is now making his first forays into management. I'm talking, of course, about Jordi Cruyff, currently manager of Chongqing in China. I was working in Chongqing and was really hoping that Jordi would be free to chat. He was, and I was delighted. Over the next 50 minutes or so, you will understand why. Jordi is able to analyze experiences and learn from them. He's a thinker and a man able to take lessons from life because he's open-minded and has travelled and lived all over the world, soaking up cultures and influences as he's moved around. Amongst other things, our conversation covered his childhood and early career at Barcelona, the difference not only between English and Spanish football, but also the difference between crowds in the two countries, illustrated with a brilliant example of Roy Keane's tackling versus Ryan Giggs' ability to run with the ball. We talk about which Manchester United player impressed him the most and what his later playing career and time in sports administration and management have been like. Sit back and enjoy hearing from one of the most thoughtful and insightful sports people you are ever likely to encounter. Jordi, welcome. I was thinking while I was sitting in the hotel reception here in Chongqing, it must be 20 years ago, I was sitting at home near Manchester watching you on Match of the Day, and now we're in a mega city, the biggest metropolitan area in the world, apparently. 20 years later. Life's a funny thing, hey?
Absolutely. That's so-called planning. In other words, my plans never seem to work out. I always seem to end up somewhere else. But nice experience, different culture. Nice to enjoy it.
Yeah, how have you found life out in China? I mean, I come here quite regularly for work. It's my fourth time to Chongqing. It has its challenges. It's not like Europe.
No, I think we're also in a city that hardly speaks any English. And, like usual signs that you can make yourself understood with in basically in any place in Europe doesn't really seem to work here. So it's a real challenge. Try to simplify things. But there's other cities that are very modern, beautiful, good communicative. China, I don't know, it's kind of one of those mysterious places you just need to visit. And in that aspect, I'm quite happy that I've had the chance to do that.
You've been here, nearly 8 months? You came in August 2018?
Yeah.
How have you found the standard of the league, the players? Because the reputation it has in Europe is that players come here for the money, to be honest.
Well, obviously it's a major factor, for sure. Also because it doesn't really have a culture like the top leagues in Europe. So, if you want to build a culture and you want to attract the best players, you'll probably have to pay them significant amounts. On the other hand, the stadiums are quite nice. There's some games, like for us, we have, I think, an average of around, I'm not sure, like 30, 35,000.
That's Premier League.
Yeah, which is
standard,
a lot, yeah. And even though the stadium is a 65,000 seater, but I think most of the stadiums were from the Olympic Games probably, and they're still being used. And quite modern, the organization before the game, very good, like as if it was a Champions League game the day before you train in the stadium you're going to play. You make the press conference with the player, the VAR is here, which also obviously helps a lot to make it a bit more fair kind of results, because the referees also have their share in football nowadays. So the VAR gives you a feeling that things are also more fair. And also sometimes you see foreign referees here. Last weekend, Klattenberg,
Oh yeah.
yeah. It's I was shocked. I didn't expect him over here.
Oh, he was refereeing your game.
Yeah, he was refereeing our game, and the foreigners, of course, are top level. Really, the foreign players active in China are top level. Some in the prime of their football career, others a little bit on the older side, on the ending side. They're helping the younger Chinese, the local players to advance. It can improve, but if they keep the same persistence and the same level of investment, purely out of statistics with the population that China has, there is going to be a moment they're going to be able to have 30 wonderful players on the pitch.
Yeah, I've heard they want to win the World Cup by the middle of the century. I mean, I know that's a bit of a theory, but what are the Chinese players like that you've dealt with?
I've seen a bit of all. I've seen the older players who are open-minded. I've seen the older players who are, traditional-minded, difficult to change. I've also seen the younger players with kind of already just kind of happy to be there. And then you see some young players that you can just see in their eyes the hunger they have to learn. They want to be a sponge. They want to learn everything they can. They want to see every single video analysis. Are asking for more trainings. They're asking for more like video analysis. They love that because also when there's a language barrier, videos always seem to be very clear. And you see there's a young generation also of passionate players. And if they can just get the right information, eventually they will grow. I'm not sure if it's World Cup, if that is a realistic thing. But if you look at the population and you just make a very simple mathematical calculation, they've got to close that gap somehow, sometime, somewhere.
This is a big question, but what's the key to developing a culture in China, football culture?
Because it's such a big country, it's very difficult to unify leagues. This city, we're talking about 32 million people only in this city, and
apparently there's more people in Chongqing than Canada.
Well, that says it all, doesn't it? It's if you look at it, it's. We're smiling about it, but it's really unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, it took me 40 minutes to get here, and you're driving through what would be the city centre anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, it's massive. So imagine how China is. Like, how can you unify a population of 30 million people and then calculate how many kids there are and that they play in the same league and that you can scout them and you can teach them and you can show them and you can give them some individual kind of help. It's difficult to unify. I think once they unify the youth levels, like already from the age of 8-9 years old, they start to play and understand and breathe football, then they will make a huge step. But to unify that, it's almost impossible.
So is the role of what you're doing, the top of the game, is the role really to inspire?
Well, I think now, I've seen a lot of foreigners in a lot of youth academies, in federations, but also in clubs. They are trying to make the right steps. But also then it's important that at least in your same club you get the same message, that not one age you get one thing and then the other age you hear another thing. But I'm not really involved in the youth. It's already hard enough with the language barriers to just focus on the first team. So that's my input. Obviously, you have your personal football vision. But nowadays, you can't just go to a club and say, okay, this is my book, this is how we're going to do it, and there's no other way. You have to accept the strengths and the weaknesses of your team. And if you don't want to be, lose 5 games in a row and being thrown out, you'll have to adjust some things of your philosophy, which, it's a necessity. And that's what we're trying to do. So you're always trying to find the right puzzle to kind of hide your weaknesses and exploit, get the maximum out of the good things that you have. And also we're doing it here, even though on a personal level, I would love to play much more the build-up game from behind and all those things, but we're not ready for that yet.
Well, let's talk football actually, and your passion for football. One thing that strikes me is that you seem, this is the first time I've met you, but it seems like you have a huge passion for the game. You played until you were, 36?
Yeah, but I think the last 4 years of my career are a bit of a, I had bad knees. I had to stop playing.
But you were trying to play and you wanted to play. Then you went into director of football. Now you're a manager. I'm guessing it's not about the money. What's the passion?
I think I actually think it's interesting to be able to adapt yourself to different roles. It takes also a lot of not only the desire, passion, or interest to listen to people, to learn. It also takes discipline. I seem to have the self-control or the discipline to, if I'm a sport director, I don't sit on the chair of the coach. Simple as that. I know how to kind of sit in my chair and not even think about sitting on another one. And now that I'm a coach and I work with a sport director, I also sit in my chair and I don't try to, I know what he's talking about and we understand each other fast because I've been in his chair. But I maintain my very clear borders, very clear lines to where is my job description. On the other hand, which used to be my case, if I bring the coach or I signed the coach for my club or the owner followed me because of my advice to bring a certain coach, then the coach doesn't have to be afraid about me. I'm the first one who wants his success because his success makes my advice to the owner also successful. So we're in the same kind of line here, but we always talked about football. The coach can ask sport actor, what would you do for this weekend? You can talk and he will do what he wants. That's his job. But you need to know how to differentiate your jobs. I think that's the most important part.
Where does the overarching passion come from in football? Is it because some people will say, I just love winning. Other people, it's the beauty of the game. It's trying to perfect something. Some people improving players.
I think it's ultimately you want to win because winning gives happiness and losing gives sadness, and nobody wants to be sad in his daily life, even though sometimes that's part of the job. But I think it's kind of a passion. You want to win. You want to overcome difficulties. For myself, I can speak on my own. In my own experience, I've had a little bit of everything. I've had good years in football. I've had bad years in football. I've had fit years in football. I've had also 12, 13 operations, so you can never really get. I kind of have been through the emotional ups and downs of football to understand that, to understand how players can feel, so I can identify quickly how a player feels about certain things when you're finishing contract and you're injured, when you are a kind of a squad player or you're always left out to be the number 19. I've kind of had the luck and the bad luck of being through them almost all. So it also gives me an understanding position here. I can, they always say, yeah, you get paid to do your job, and like football players, and you get paid to do your job, and if you're not playing, you need to be 100%. Listen, it's difficult, and many coaches don't understand that that's part of football. It's difficult when you don't feel valued. It's difficult to feel or act as if you feel valued, even though you get paid a good sum of money every month. But it's difficult. It's psychology.
Yeah, I mean, one of the people we interviewed on this show was Tony Smith, who was a very successful rugby league coach, maybe again in the future. And he said something that I've quoted a few times. And he said, the fact you get paid a lot of money doesn't change the fact your marriage is struggling or your kids are getting bullied at school or the team isn't playing well. He said it's not really the defining factor of your happiness.
Absolutely. I think it's, there's a lot of things that come into it. Nowadays, for example, one of the most important things, especially with so many different cultures at a football club, with nationalities, everything, the most important thing is to make sure the moment the player arrives with his family, they're taken care of from A to Z, which means if they don't speak the language, somebody needs to go with them to the supermarket, open accounts, just do everything that they need, be 24/7 available, because when the player knows his family is calm and taken care of, he gives you more. It's human. So there's a lot of factors coming into success of a professional in any sport, in any football club. It's not only he's talented, he's going to succeed. No.
Well, there's so many things to pick up there, but there's so many chapters to your career, as you mentioned. Let's go back to the start. When you started playing football, was there a pressure on you to start, or was it something you found organically? I mean, I know the family you grew up in, there'll be footballs around. It's part of life.
I think I was born with the ball home. You know, you
But
always
no pressure put on you, or
no, from my family, absolutely not. Also, the fact that my father had games during the weekend when normally youth games are also being played, you know, it already shows that I also needed the other part of the family's help, like my mother in this case, you know, bringing me to places. I think I didn't feel any pressure until I got to Spain at the age of 14, because I didn't feel any comparison before. In Holland, they seem to find it normal and acceptable that, okay, his son is playing and he enjoys the game. And that's when I felt that people started to look at me not as a young boy who wants to enjoy, but as somebody who wanted to be a pro. And I was only 14. I just wanted to enjoy myself. So the pressure started to be on, and I really felt it. I was also, you know, I was much smaller. I mean, if you look at 15-year-old Spanish, he's like a mini man. You know, he's like almost, you know, he's almost getting there. And in Holland, we're still like a boy. I think I grew like over 15 centimeters at the age of 17. So all the guys who were, you know, like putting their hand on my head, like after scoring a goal, but down a year after, I was doing that to them. You know, I had a growth spurt. So it's a lot of cultural differences, physical, very difficult.
why
Was
the
difficult.
difference though between? I'd have thought if you grow up with your surname in Amsterdam, that's a
I
big deal.
think Dutch are much more like laid back in certain things, like much more.
Is football a smaller part of life in Amsterdam?
No, I think they love it, but I think there's just less stress. You know, it's probably goes with the city. I don't know with Amsterdam, but it's like more calm. You know, and maybe it's true. Maybe I wasn't living in the city center. I wasn't really reading a lot, so maybe I just didn't get it. But I never really felt it. And imagine the situation. My father, his last year of football, he signed for Feyenoord, and I was in Ajax Youth Academy, which is like at that time the two hatred clubs. And my father playing in one, I was in the youth of the other, and I used to go to his games and watch his trainings and walk in the dressing room of their first team. You know, as like many fathers bring their sons sometimes on a Saturday morning training. And I was there with theoretically the enemies of my club, but
that wouldn't happen with Barcelona and Real Madrid.
No, that would be a tough call. But you can compare it this way. You know, it was really awkward. But Feyenoord people are always amazing to me. They saw me as a kid. They never saw me as a threat in any way, and probably they respected my father also a lot in that aspect. And so I've been through a lot of these kind of things. But Spain, it was hectic because people really wanted a new Cruyff. And let's be honest, I'm a mortal, like 99.9% of all the football players nowadays in the world. And my father was an immortal, and you cannot compare the two. So whatever comparison there was, it was a lost cause before starting.
Yeah, I can't help thinking, it was a little bit before my time, but I can't help thinking you were judged by a different standard at Barcelona, because if you look at the statistics and reading reports and what I could find out from research, when you started playing for Barcelona alongside Stoichkov and Koeman, it seemed like by any measure you were doing a pretty good job.
I think at the age of 17, I think I had there was a national league, the under-19s. I was 17. And actually, I had 2-3 good years in a row. Like I was top scorer in 1 year. Then I went to Barcelona B. I was also top scorer of our team, at least, in Barcelona B. And there was a time there was a lot of youth players training, sometimes with the first team, also getting some chances. I was playing as a local in the time before the Bosman ruling. So I was interesting because I was playing as a Spanish boy. At that time, I used to get invitations for Spain under 21, Holland under 21, and I didn't want to make a decision because I really didn't know what I wanted to decide. Don't forget that when I was born, 1974, my father was playing in Barcelona. I was born in a Dutch hospital because I was cesarean, and my mother wanted to go to the same hospital as with my older sisters. Or else I would have been, full Spanish, born in Spain. So 8 days after I was born, I was already in Spain. My first language is Spanish. Like the first years of my life were in Spain. So I've always had that kind of connection with Spain.
But when you were coming into the Barcelona team, surely you were treated differently.
My father was extra tough. He really wanted to show the players that there was no cutting corners, no favoritism. And okay, that's probably the correct way. I think it was the correct way. But also, I think everybody could see there that I had, in a way, justified getting a chance by having good years in the under 19, Barcelona B, very good year. I had a lot of, there were quite some offers to get me on loan from Primera División. So you get called up for the under 21, Spain and Holland. Yeah, it means you've got something in you, or else these things don't come.
What was it like playing at Barcelona? Because they've got the famous Mesquite Club. There's the huge stadium.
For me, it's
the whole
for me
city
it's a very special club.
It looks like a special club from the outside.
Yeah, it's a special club for me. I've had a little bit of Ajax in my younger years, but I was really young. And I think the age of 14, 15, it's kind of when you start opening your eyes about life in general. And that happened in Spain. So I've always had a comfortable feeling with Barcelona, with the club. To be honest, it's also one of the clubs you really stay home for to watch their games, because they just have an amazing player on the pitch, and the team and how they play and everything. It's a special club. I have them high. They're a special club for me. Always the clubs where you've played for, they have a special place in your heart, especially if you've had a decent time. If you've only had disappointments, it's probably experience to forget. But when you kind of have been happy, you always have that eye looking at your past and wishing the best for the clubs you've been.
Did you think you'd stay at Barcelona forever? Did you just think, this is me, I want to stay here?
Yeah, but I also understood that in the last years there was a lot of political things in the club, and with my father, was not an easy person, and I knew there was also the chance to get out. And actually, the day before signing at United, I had an agreement with Ajax to go with Van Gaal in Holland to play for Ajax, and I think it was on a Sunday. 3-4 United people came, Ferguson and a few board members, I think, and I think it was quick. Then I understood. I saw the squad, a lot of young players, and I said, this is the place for me. And I changed, and I flew to Manchester the next day.
Well, Manchester United are in trouble right now, but back then, when someone like Alex Ferguson comes to see you, what's that like? That must have a huge effect.
Of course. And the fact they knew a lot about me, which means it wasn't just 2 games on a video they saw, but they knew a lot. And I thought it was interesting because I saw they had a lot of young players, and I felt it was a place that the pressure would be taken off me. Like going to Ajax, knowing my father was an Ajax legend, was probably going from one hot place to another, in a way. Out of
the frying pan and into the fire.
Yeah. Well, but Ajax probably less than Barcelona was. But I think it was, it felt like a good place where I could, with stability, with patience, that I could try to grow a little bit.
What was it like at United? I guess a big change.
I think
physically.
In the beginning, 96, I'm supposed people in England are tired of hearing this, but there is a big difference between lifestyle between
Spain and England,
Barcelona and Manchester, especially at that time, 96. I think it was in the center. They bombed something there.
Yeah, the IRA
so we couldn't really, and I've always been a city center person, and suddenly I found myself living in Bramhall and in the south of Manchester, and with no movement whatsoever beside me. It was
it's quiet down there.
Yeah, it was, and I've always been a city person. I like movement. So it was difficult. Also, I was young, maybe a little bit immature, and then again, when you have so many operations, you just can't get going.
Did you never get any momentum at United?
No, I think I didn't get momentum. It was a moment that Ferguson understood that he couldn't rely on me. And I don't think football-wise even. I think it was more I was just never fit when he wanted to make the rotations. So for a manager, now I see it myself, then you think, listen, I've got a guy here who has to be the number 2 for this position. And he's just never there when I want to rest number 1. So I'm going to bring a number 3. And that's how life goes. That's sport.
What's your abiding memory when you look back on United now? Was it just was it an unhappy period, or can you take some positives from it?
No, I had if there was any unhappiness, it was pure frustration that I could just not show it on the pitch. If you look at my stats, even I don't think in terms of goals, games, they're actually not bad. I just couldn't get games. But again, at that time, I think I was training quite good and all those things. But if you look at who's on the pitch, and you look at, the Beckham, the Giggs, Scholes, Keane, Cantona, I don't know, York, Solskjaer, Sheringham, come on, you just have to accept that you might not be the first instrument the manager is going to put on the pitch. And now I see it. At that time, you're kind of blind. You kind of think you have to play anyways, which is laughable when you think about it now.
Well, yeah, but you need a bit of that confidence.
Yeah, but listen, it was difficult just in the beginning. The football was completely different. And
faster, more physical?
More physical, but the way I would say, faster running, not with the ball. The ball was not faster. The ball passing, it's more fast than anything else. The ball is quicker than the player. So if you pass the ball quick, the ball will be faster. But I think it was also a bit cultural. And I'll give you an example. Now I learned to balance this idea, okay? But when I came and I would see Roy Keane making a tackle in the midfield, and he would just, hoof. He would take the ball and everybody near him would just end up on the ground. And he would take the ball clean. He had that, this poison, this winning mentality in him, unbelievable. And poison in a positive way, like in a winning mentality, that ball was just his. And people were actually really like, wow, you would hear this thing in the stadium. And when Giggs made an amazing dribble, it would be like, yeah. And I was thinking, man, you guys just see football completely the opposite way as we see it in Europe. We stand up for Giggs' dribble, and we applaud and we clap for Roy Keane's tackle. But we stand up for the dribble, not for the tackle. And I think that's just, that summed it up for me to say, wow, this is just different. With the time, I also start to value more the balance of things. I also started to value, and I'm not saying the English were wrong. Probably I was wrong. But there was a lot of culture differences for me at that time.
That's a fascinating insight. I mean, I don't want to just talk about United, but if you've listed some of the players you played with, who stood out and for what reason?
The one who I admired the most, but I never wanted to show him, and I'm not going to say the names, that the Cantonas, that just the way he put on his shirt and his chest was just, it's like a statue. You would just love the look of this guy. But and actually was an amazing person. Like all the foreigners, young foreigners we came, first month he would pick us up from the hotel, bring us back. He had a very social side that people...
Cantona.
Yeah, I think people have no idea the social side of this guy is unbelievable. Inspiration in every aspect, helpful. Probably knew as a Mediterranean how much I was struggling. I also think that's probably a factor why he kind of tried to help me in the beginning. But I think one of the players that I really admired for many different reasons was Scholes. This guy would be so humble, scoring a hat-trick, 3 days after another 2, 3 days after another 2, and you would see him in the dressing room, and I would think, wow, if that was me, they would have to just rebuild the door because my ego wouldn't fit in the door, in the way you're proud, you get carried away. This is, wow, scoring 6-7 goals in 3 games, come on. The guy would just stay so humble, calm, quiet, never change his voice, always calm. But let's not forget, Scholes also had a mean side. Always when you would pass the ball, there would always be somebody clipping your ankles, and it was always Scholes. Always that second after passing up, boom, he would just let you know he's there. And his finishing, his volleys left or right, his timing to get in the box, for me was he's one of the players that a lot of times in my career I really thought and hoped and wished that he would go to the Spanish league, because he had the football, he had a British things, but he could have made he could have done something in Spain. As you've seen, like many British players that go to Spain, you know, it doesn't always seem to work out for whatever reason that I'll have my personal opinions about, but it's difficult. It's just different kind of football. And when you can succeed in both, then you can say, I've got what it takes. I think Scholesy was one of those that if he would have tried one of the top 3 in Spain, top 4, he would have scored goals. He would have been respected. He had everything, ball and without the ball.
Didn't want to leave Manchester, though.
Yeah, understandably, though. But I think now, if he probably looks back, he probably will say, I wish I just would have tried a little bit of other kind of bread, you know, just the other kind of seeing football.
It's difficult, isn't it? You only get that one career and you don't get the benefit of that hindsight. But what was the T-shirt they used to have for Scholes? Turn up, score, go home.
He was, I don't know, he was just unbelievable. Like, and then you had the 2 Nevilles, who were completely different. There was one who was really closed-minded, which was Gary. At that time, okay, we're talking, I don't know, what is it now? 22 years ago. Yeah, so come on. I was also probably some kind of idiot doing stupid things, but I mean, he was close-minded, you know. It was really local-minded.
And when you say close-minded, you mean focused on Manchester?
No, but also England, you know, Manchester, British, you know, like bam, and no eyes for nothing. And Phil was always a little bit more open-minded on how is it there, you know, and how do the people in other countries think about this? Of course, now life has changed, and you know, Gary's made a good career out of you know, basically giving opinions, more open-minded in many aspects. Of course, had experience
in Valencia.
Yeah, well, that was then a more difficult side. But you know, I used to like. It was a real group of young players from the region, you know, from Manchester and outskirts, and their dream was just Manchester. Same like Puyol. Many times, probably he will think for himself, "Wow, maybe I should have tried a year of Italy or of England." But on the other hand, all life Barcelona also makes him special. You know, it makes him special. So, I don't know. Probably you have to be in that situation to really understand them. But yeah, I think it was just different culture, different lifestyle, different way of actually thinking and breathing football.
And after United, you went back to La Liga.
Yeah, I actually had an agreement to go to West Ham for 3 years.
And
with
who was manager there?
Redknapp.
Right.
And I don't know, it was delaying just a little bit. And every time I started to get more the feeling that I actually maybe not to take a risk and stay in the league that I knew was tough for me, even though London was a different kind of city then. But I don't know, I really took a gamble. I had a 3-year possible deal with West Ham, and I went to Alaves for 1 year with some options. And it was an amazing choice.
Was it a happy period of your career, Alaves?
Yeah, I think it was happy because I understood that I was more happy, let me see if I say this right, to be the head of a mouse than to be the tail of an elephant. Yeah, so I was more happy.
A big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, you can say that also. I suppose that's more logic. But I was more happy to be an important part in a small club than to be a little bit like the number 19, 20, 21 in a big club.
And it's good you can say that.
Yeah,
a lot of people would be not a bit embarrassed to admit that.
No, but listen, it's Primera División. We played the UEFA Cup final against Liverpool. You know,
it's not a small club.
So no, but it's not a historical club, but it's a small like it's a normal club, like humilde. How do you say that? Like calm, low key.
Yeah,
you know.
And then what's also interesting is you carried on playing. You went to Ukraine and
That I had a stop like after 3 years Alaves. I went to Espanyol. I signed 2 years. After 1 year, I was in talks with Bolton Wanderers. I didn't pass the medical test, but before doing the medical test, I stopped my contract with Espanyol, which obviously was a huge stupidity to do, because I played 30. I think I played 34 games that season, something like that, in Primera División. So almost all the games. So I felt fit. And then I broke my contract there. And I thought I'm going to go one more time to England and medical test. And I failed. And I said, how can I fail? I played 34 games. And then I went to the doctor in Barcelona and he said, Jordi, it's, you're not, it's being optimistic. You have 50% chance of playing football. This is your end. I was 31. 32. I just broke a contract, so I did all the mistakes that you can just make at that time. Part of the learning process, I suppose. And then I was 2 years without playing. I couldn't play. I had a big hole in my knee, like the articular cartilage was just absolutely gone. And then I was 2 years without playing, and I was in a difficult period. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, so I started to collect shirts. Like from old shirts from the past, from the 80s, 90s. I don't know. We're strange people sometimes. And there was one turning point that I went with my parents and my sisters and with my kids, with my wife at that time, to skiing. And I just would see them going skiing in the morning and come back in the afternoon. And I would just sit, like in the sun and, I don't know, read a book, whatever. And one day my father came and he said, listen, why don't you try skiing? I said, come on, that's a stupid question. If I can't even jog, how can I ski? He says, do you have pain? I said, yes. I said, okay, you already have pain, so go skiing.
Can't get any worse.
And it kind of. Well, probably it can.
Well,
because skiing, you can get bad accidents
famous
skiing.
Last words,
yeah, so I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. And I went skiing and I skied for 3-4 hours and I didn't have more pain. So I thought, wait a minute, if I can go skiing, how can I not play football? So then I started to take a rehab more seriously. I started to believe in it. After 6 months, I was fit to play, but I could not train hard every day. So I would really have to steal my sessions and be on the pitch without being noticed that you're just not doing nothing one day. And I understood I could not do that on the highest level. And then I got an offer in Donetsk, which was a very good financial offer after 2 years without playing. And I told him, listen, I'm not sure. Like, I don't know. So I'd come here and help us on the pitch or off the pitch with the young players, and I went for it and I enjoyed it. And from there on, but I knew I could not play football anymore on the big, the big level, that you have to perform day in, day out.
What was the appeal of playing again then?
I don't know. To overcome to decide that I will retire when I decide, not when my knee decides.
Right.
Was some internal kind of ego issue, maybe. I don't know. We had a internal war deciding, listen, don't cut me off yet. I want to play a little bit more. I wasn't ready to stop.
Well, when you finally did stop, you went to Valletta, right?
Actually, I was going to be a player coach there.
At Valletta?
Yeah, just player coach. I just went through divorce, hard time. I just needed to disconnect a bit.
That's a nice place as well.
Yeah, it was nice and reasonably nearby, completely Mediterranean, nice little island. I liked it.
Home.
Yeah, I liked it. So I said it was only 7-8 months, and the distances were very doable to go back and forth when needed, and I played there. Part of the games midfield, a little bit central defender. Also in Ukraine, they put me back for a while, central defender to organize. Okay, and Valletta, I was like player. I was going to be player manager, and then I wanted to bring my assistant. They said no. So I said, okay, then I'll be player, but bring the coach that I want. And they said yes, which basically is the same. So in the end, I was player and assistant and assisting the coach. And I think it helped me to decide which way I wanted to go the day after. Do I want to be coach or do I want to go on the other side, the the sport director side. Now, I must also say I've always been pushed by my father to study. I was in Barcelona and I got my business management like university. I went 3-4 years to university. When I was in Manchester, I also went to 1 year university to do a marketing postgraduate. So I've always been interested in things. You know, it's not only the ball and that's it. I don't like golf. I prefer to study things that might help me after, that interest me. So the economical side of football, I also liked it. And so my last year of football, it was, what am I going to do the day after? My knees are gone. Is it going to be sport director or am I going to coach? That year I decided I'm going to go sport director.
It's an unusual choice. I understand from what you've just said what your reasons were. What was it like? Was it what you expected?
I loved it. I must say the first day of training, you know, when you go to pre-season and, you know, before the first training, you kind of have a circle and then you're waiting for the bosses to talk. Sometimes the owner, sometimes the general manager, sport director, or the coach, or sometimes all of them, you know, just a quick word. And suddenly I found myself in the circle and everybody looking at me. And I said, Jesus, yeah, they're waiting for me.
Yeah.
I need to talk. And of course, I'm quite quick in my, I'm a quick thinker. So I got out of it quite good. And I said, Jordi, this is it. And from there on, I just adjusted immediately. I think it comes natural. The sport director thing, it's intuition. It comes natural. And I liked it. And I had 2 years there. And I like to go to a place where I could learn. If you go too early to the big stage and you fail, you never get a second chance.
Yeah.
So I thought I'll do it step by step. And I want to see if I enjoy it. The day I don't enjoy it, I will stop immediately. And I started to try things. I was passionate about the Dutch way of playing, but also the Spanish way of playing, plus the winning mentality. So what did I do? I signed 4 Dutch players, 4 Spanish players, and I started to like test things, how things would gel in. You know, the Dutch romantic way of playing with 4 winners who can also play good football, but when they have a bad day, they still know how to win that game. That's the mix I wanted. And I started to try things. 2 years with decent results. Like for who we were, we actually had 2 very good years. And then club with a Canadian owner came and they bought me. They paid my clause in the contract and I signed there. Thinking
in
Maccabi.
Israel, yeah.
Yeah, I thought I would be there 2 years at most. I spent there 6. I enjoyed it. I liked it. The owner, amazing man, Canadian, and was only thinking about building a football culture. Just a culture. Never put any pressure on results, nothing. Only the culture. I want these players to be professional. He loved ice hockey, so he likes a bit of a tough way of acting, also discipline, everything. No cutting corners, and I really enjoyed it.
And now you're here in Western China in management. What's management been like?
I came from, after 6 years, I just in the last years my father passed away. You know, I've been many years away from my kids, and then I thought I'm going to just have a 6 to 12 month break. I will settle in Barcelona. I want to be near my mother, near my kids, my sisters, just look after family things a little bit, also the companies that my father left behind, you know, and kind of also reassess myself, freshen up, go to see a few sport directors over Europe, see them work for a week, go to see a few managers, see them work for a week, you know, a refreshing course. That's what I wanted to do for myself. Suddenly, I think it was first week of August, I got a call from the Spanish people who, you know, kind of are involved in this club. And yeah, they came with an offer that I felt I should not resist.
So how long had you been home? In Barcelona?
2 months.
Okay.
Yeah,
So it
not
didn't really
enough,
work
not for what I had planned. But that's the life of sport. It's like a nomad life. You know, you just travel all around. But there are days that I feel, little by little, the time is arriving for me to come close to home. And when I say close to home, I mean Europe, few hours flying, 2-3 hours flying from home. You know, that will give me already a feeling of home. That moment will come. I don't know when it's going to be, but I think it's, you know, my heart is You know, it's
Yeah, I
it's
understand
pushing
that.
me back a
I
little bit.
understand that.
But little by little, not yet.
No. And what's management like? What's been the biggest surprise?
Nowadays, it's almost, and it's sad to say, it's a week by week job. As I said before, you know, theoretically, you're the captain of the ship. So you're the most powerful guy in a way in regards to football decisions. But the bottom truth is you're the most fragile person in the club. Because if you lose 4 games, they're not going to change 22 players. They're going to change the coach, the manager. So it's a life full of contradiction. You have, even nowadays, you can have fantastic 2 first months. And in the 3rd month, you lose 4 games and people are already arguing about your position. You know, they're doubting your position. That's how football is. That's just, you know, social media has changed. Everything has changed. This also has changed. So the real difference is, as a sport director, you divide your job into 3. You think about the long term, you think about the midterm, and you think about the short term. As a coach, you should be thinking a little bit about long term when you think about young players, but you just don't make it. You're thinking short term and a little bit of medium term. I think that's the biggest difference. The statistics show this. You know,
Yeah,
look how many
I know.
managers come and go nowadays, and the players always seem to stay.
Yeah.
But that's also, you know, that's just how it is. We're not going to change that. It's there's so much investment going on. Foreign owners with different mentality, different cultures, they expect an immediate investment, immediate return. And football is just a big sum, add up of so many different ingredients. Why does a good player like Ibrahimovic, an amazing player like Ibrahimovic, not succeed in Barcelona? And why he succeeds in every other club in the world? Why? People don't know the answer. Do you say it's the system because Barcelona have a very peculiar style of playing? No, it's not a problem. Ibrahimovic is grown up in Ajax, who play the same system, and he was wonderful, you know. And it's just hard to explain why 1 + 1 in football is almost never 2.
Does it? I don't want to say does it make you love the game less, but do you have the same passion for it, even though it's changing so much? Does it make you fall out of love slightly with football? This change the coach, change everything.
Things are changing a lot, but I think it's the difficulty is growing, but you just need to go on with it. You know, if you love the game, you accept the changes. Things are not the same as 10 years ago. You just need to accept it, and if you don't want to accept it, then go home and enjoy something else. That's just the way things are evolving at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question you won't be able to answer, but never mind. I know you've got to get to training. It seems like you've done everything football has to offer. You played at the highest level, you've played for smaller clubs, you've been in administration, you've now been a manager. What do you think the future holds for you? What would you like the future to hold? Might be a better question.
I've been a horrible planner. Everything I plan in my life, it just goes different. But I believe there's always a reason for things. I've taken, I like different cultures. I like difficulties. I've gone to countries where others would prefer to be in a second division in a top country than me not. I like it, you know. For me, I hope in the next month or so I will see the Great Wall. I will see, you know, the Tianjin army. I will see all the things, you know. And for me, it's the cultural part is also nice and important. But I do think it's probably in 1 or 2 years I'll be back where I have to be.
Well, I started this interview by saying, who would have thought 20 years ago we'd be sitting in Chongqing in China? So
yeah.
I guess that says everything.
How did you call it before? The biggest?
It's the biggest metropolitan area.
Yeah.
So Tokyo is bigger than Chongqing if you include all the bits around it.
Yeah.
But for the central city, this is the biggest
Yeah.
city in the world. And most people haven't heard of it.
Yeah, unbelievable. Well, neither did I before coming. And when I
Yeah,
tell
me
people,
neither.
they ask me what club do you work for, I still the pronouncing is still
People
tough.
think it's a joke name. They go, what?
Yeah. But that's the fact. But China is now they've been here for a while. You do see it's growing fast.
Well, I'm going to now tackle it and cross to the southern side of Chongqing. But I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man and you've got a big job here in Chongqing. So appreciate you taking an hour out of your busy day.
No problem. Thanks a lot.
Thank you again to Jordi for taking some time out to chat to me, and best of luck to him wherever life ends up taking him. Whichever club he eventually calls his home, we'll be very lucky to have him. If you've enjoyed today's show, I have a small favour to ask. Don't worry, it doesn't involve spending any money, it just involves going to iTunes and leaving a review for us. It really helps us out and will help to ensure that we can keep bringing you conversations like this one, which seems a pretty good reward for the 30-second job of leaving a review. Next time on the show, I'm chatting to a man who's worked as a coach and mentor to some of the best-known rugby players and teams in the world. Stay tuned for that one and much more. Thanks for listening.